How sweet. Fresh meat. And the fresh meat today are Jess and Alyssa from Horror Movie Tea. Hello, guys.
I love it.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thanks
see
so
what I
much
did
for
there?
having us.
On this video, we will be returning to the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. So this is going to be our thoughts on Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master from 1988. And yeah, Jess and Alyssa have agreed to jump on board for this one. Me and Rachel did do the first 3 Nightmare on Elm Street movies last year, so you can find those reviews up on the channel. Me and Rachel both love the first and the third one. We agree that the third one is one of the best sequels, certainly for horror, probably ever. And we were a bit more mixed on the second one in the franchise. Rachel especially didn't like it. I thought I was mixed on it, but I was a little bit more positive than she was. So just to ask my guests, because I know you've probably seen all 3 of those.
Yes.
Would you agree with that summing up when it comes to the first 3?
I feel like me and Jess are maybe a little split on the third one.
I
so
think
like
we are.
the first one is
Okay.
obviously going to be the strongest movie. The
Obviously,
second one
yeah.
I thought was really entertaining, but it did take a really weird spin. The third one, I will be honest, is kind of nostalgic for me because ironically that was the very first Nightmare on Elm Street movie that I started off with. And I just completely
Forgot about
stumbled
that.
on it because my parents had like recorded it on VHS. That ages me. But it's like the third one, I like it still, but it does get a little silly, but still has some horror elements. But it definitely, like, especially towards the end when they have like their powers or whatever, it definitely steers a little bit more towards like action-y type of movie than like horror.
Okay.
But yeah,
Little
I'd say
bit.
the first and third are probably my favorite, but the second is like, okay, you gotta be in the mood for it, but you're certainly entertained.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first one definitely the best out of the 3.
Okay.
I feel like I don't know what happened, but the second movie is kind of blocked from all of my memories. I don't even really remember what happened. I feel like that one could definitely be skipped if that's any indication.
Yeah.
Third one is a bit sillier than I would like in this franchise.
This is a hot take compared to most people.
I mean, like, the powers and all, it just, once they reached that point and on, it was just beyond ridiculous.
Okay.
And when the skeleton rises up and all, it just,
Yeah.
I couldn't take it
Okay.
seriously from
Okay.
like that point on. So
Okay. Wow.
like
Okay.
it could
Well,
be better.
people have been kicked off podcasts
What?
for less. I have to warn you, Jess. But
It's not my cup of tea personally,
okay.
but it's not like horrible. It's just not what I would prefer to watch. If
What you
I'm
would
going to
want.
grab a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, it's definitely not the one I'm going to grab.
Complements the first one. Like, it feels more of a sequel to the first one than
It
like
does.
the second
Mhm.
one.
Yeah.
But they also add to it as well. They do their own thing. So I
Yeah.
think a lot of people appreciate that.
Which you kind of have to do in sequels, so it's not rinse and repeat. But
Yeah.
I
But
feel
it
like they
wasn't
could have
for
done it
you.
a different way.
This one certainly goes places as well. Before we start, I'll start off by saying it's directed by Renny Harlin, the action director, and I think this was his first film. So he's done things such as the second Die Hard. He did The Long Kiss Goodnight. He also did Deep Blue Sea, classic guilty pleasure movie.
I do
So
like that one.
yeah, so he's got a pretty solid track record as like an action director, certainly. Follow on from the third movie because it brings back Christian, but not played by Patricia Arquette, because I guess they couldn't get her back.
I guess not. That confused the heck out of me, honestly.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
a pretty obvious switch. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, she's played by an actress with a brilliant name, Tuesday Night. In the death of Nancy Thompson, spoiler for number 3, Freddy returns to kill the last of the remaining Dream Warrior kids. That includes Christian, as I said, and Christian's friend Alice, played by Lisa Wilcox, later gains the power to go into others' dreams. This means that she can absorb their abilities or the abilities of anyone who is killed by Freddy. She can then fight Freddy on a more even playing field. She is the Dream Master of the title. I hope that was a good enough basic setup for the movie. Give you, Alyssa, what did you think overall of this movie?
Well, trying to keep it spoil free. I mean, it definitely, I feel like they almost are trying to kind of sneak back to their roots a little bit. I feel like this film was slightly more serious than the third one, but still like very much continuing and being true to what they established in the third movie. But yeah, like overall, I kind of like that they kind of twisted it back a little bit to the darker tone. But it still had, you know, what we expect from Freddy, the cheesy lines and really imaginative, like nightmare scenes. And, you know, it's like this is the fourth film now, and they still come up with scenes and deaths that I find like really creative and interesting and new. So I feel like, you know, with it being the fourth film of a franchise, they did a really good job on still keeping it somewhat fresh. It's like, yeah, it is kind of continuing from the third one, and it kind of rehashes like what they established beforehand. But to me, it didn't feel like a rinse and repeat. It did feel like it was just a continuation of the story.
It's definitely silly still compared to like the original.
Yeah,
I feel like some of the acting wasn't quite as good as
agreed.
previous movies, especially Kristen. To be perfectly honest,
Okay, yeah.
I'm awful with names, but
Tuesday night.
yeah, Tuesday
You'll
night
never forget it.
is not as good as the original Kristen. There were certain scenes that I'm like, that's the take you went with.
For sure.
But I was obviously with any of these movies, I'm living for Freddy. Like,
Yeah.
he is what I watch these movies for. He did kind of freak me out as a kid. So watching it now with a slightly different lens is it's interesting. And his one-liners and puns and everything are just
Excellent.
awesome. I just feel like a lot of the cast, in addition to him, is just not quite
Right.
up to par for it.
Yeah.
I feel like they couldn't really fully pick a lane in some instances. Like they've established several times, and we can get into this a little later with more detail, but like wounds weren't really consistent. A lot of the effects were good, and some of them were still cheesy, but you kind of expect that with Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
But I feel like it almost felt unfinished.
Agree with some of the things you just said there, because I think there's a lot of fun to be had in this movie, especially with Freddy, and this is really where he's going full-blown creepy, and there's quite a few one-liners that are quite entertaining, and Robert Englund obviously still has a presence. And
absolutely.
yeah, so he's very good in the movie. I read on the trivia that this is actually the first one where he's given top billing as like his name. Horror stuff is actually really well done, and I think I agree with Alyssa, then they do still come up with some creative ways to kill people or some creative dreams. And I think that's partly why this franchise does appeal to me, because there's a lot you can do with that kind of setup and this sort of world. And they do try and expand on the world with probably mixed results. I mean, some of this stuff does get quite convoluted in the movie. I think it feels like the movie tries to do too much at times, and that maybe there's just too many characters or too much stuff going on. I think I prefer the second half of the movie more than the first half, weirdly. And I think it's partly, and this is slight spoilers, but I think it's partly then they rushed the first half quite a lot.
Yeah.
Because I think people coming back to it would assume that Christian's going to be the main character again, like picking up from the last film.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just feels like the way like she's disposed of and then the other two friends are disposed of. It just feels like that stuff is rushed.
It does.
And that the film in general is trying to do too much. But I think I would say I'm middling on it, but I still find it quite entertaining for what it is because, again, Freddy's on good form. And, you know, there are some good kills. There's some creative, like, dream type things. I actually don't mind the idea of what they do with Alice. Because I think it feels quite comic book and quite superhero, like her role in the movie. And I don't know, I just think it's quite a cool idea to do like as part of a sequel and a little bit of a fresh twist. I mean, maybe they don't explain really how she can do these things, but it is quite cool to see. And it is a little bit of a twist. Not too bad. I think when you consider it's the fourth one in, you know, there's certainly other franchises where the fourth one in is probably a lot worse than this. But I was going to ask you guys, because we get these new characters set up at the beginning, this group of teen characters who are associated with Christian. What did you think of those characters? Any thoughts?
I mean, they have I will say in this movie, the characters themselves didn't really feel that strong.
Yeah, they were,
because they're kind of like a rehash.
they were pretty shallow
that we've seen before.
Yeah.
There wasn't
they
much
weren't terrible, but they weren't like they didn't stick out.
There wasn't much character development. It was very surface level.
Yeah.
I feel like in the very beginning, especially, they threw so many different characters at us that you didn't really feel very strongly when any of them were taken out. You're like, who was that again? Which one was this?
It really did feel rushed.
It did.
Them, like being like, oh, there's this person. Now there's this person. Now there's this person.
Now you kind of understand about midway on who they are. But again, there's not really much development apart from the final girl.
Yeah.
But even then, it's not really much.
No, not compared to some of the other films.
Yeah.
And I actually didn't mind the actress playing the final girl. And
no, she was fine.
And we'll get to the end, but I did quite like when she was like they have an 80s style like pump up type scene with her. I thought that was quite well.
Montage scene.
Well, sort of, and she was sort of putting on the clothes from like her dead friend, so that was quite fun.
It was the getting ready montage.
Yeah, very sort of 80s. There's a lot of 80s type things, but yeah, the stuff with her friends near the beginning, like when you first have them at school. I mean, again, that was very 80s, but it was very cheesy. Like there was lines like needle dick. One of them refers to someone as like a needle dick. There was that line about like calling like Van Johnson or whatever his name was, he's one major league hunk. There was actually that line, and then you had, I think it was Alice, she was imagining actually saying it to him in the next moment. But it's like, yeah, there was some really rough dialogue at times in this movie. It probably gets better as the movie goes on, but certainly in the first half there was some terrible dialogue. Some really over-the-top acting, some very hammy acting at times.
Oh, yeah.
One playing the boyfriend, Rick, like Christian's boy. Like, because he had this this goofy sort of spiky hair. He just had the
very
same
grungy.
Yeah, he just had the same expression on his face for a long time, and he was quite disrespectful to like Christian's friends as well. And it's like, yeah, that's a bit harsh. She's got history with these people, and you're just dissing them for no good reason.
Yeah.
And I just thought, yeah, they didn't have much chemistry, and I just didn't really buy them as like a pairing, really, those two.
Yeah, they didn't really make that much sense as a couple. I actually kind of enjoyed his character though for the comedy aspect of it. He was very silly throughout it. And he helped lift up the final girl. I feel like he was better than like Kristen's actress, for example. Her scenes just annoyed me. Honestly.
That's fair. Like, yeah.
Kincaid was good, Joey was good, but they were also from the previous movie.
Film.
Yeah.
So they did a decent job, but like the other friend, the other 80s friend, I forget her name. She
With
died really early on. Yeah. Big hair, had the spiky bracelet.
That was Debbie, right? I believe.
Well, if you mean Debbie, she dies quite late on. She's one of the late, because it's the weightlifting death, isn't it?
Yeah, it was the weightlifting one. Honestly, like her character was so forgettable.
Bit of a nothing.
Yeah.
And I think another thing I noticed, and this might have been down to like how bland a lot of them were, like I think a lot of them at first, I thought they were one thing. Like I thought maybe Debbie was meant to be a bit more of a bully type character, and then it turned out she wasn't. And see, I was thinking the same with the boyfriend. I was thinking, well, he's meant to be a jerk. That's his character. But then it turned out he wasn't. So I think that says something about the way the characters were written, probably. I also thought, the one who was like into maths, like the nerdy one.
Yeah.
And basically, if you've ever seen the Police Academy movies, she looks like the teen version of Hooks out of Police Academy.
Sorry, I'd never seen
it. Yeah, I haven't either.
I've just like,
I'm going to look it up.
But for anyone my age, I'm sure they'll know who I'm talking about.
A little disappointed that she didn't have more of a part to play.
Yeah, she was in and out, wasn't she?
Yeah. Once it moved to like the new group, she was like the first to go.
I enjoy the karate stuff with the Rick, his name was.
Yeah.
I quite liked him training his sister,
Yeah, I thought that was sweet.
Yeah, and at least that's something they bring back later on. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
The movie is quite well designed as well, like some of the others, because I also quite like the intro to the movie with like the credits, like these big painted sort of red letters, and again, little bit of a gothic type feel. But yeah, if you guys want to talk about maybe some of the scenes you liked or weren't so keen on, some of the Freddy stuff, Alyssa, if you want to go.
Well, I will say the way that they brought him back was interesting. How the dog like pissed fire or whatever.
I mean, I feel like that's kind of in true keeping with Nightmare on Elm Street. Like that's kind of par for the course.
It was just funny because it's like I was watching it and I'm like, wow, that's what they went with. Okay.
Yep.
Like out of all of the choices that you had, that's the one that you're like, yeah, that's what we're doing. Yep.
It's very random, yeah.
But I will say I did not appreciate Debbie's death. Because
I did appreciate it.
Well, she's got a thing about cockroaches.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like I don't know if it'd necessarily be frightening to turn into a cockroach, but it's like
I feel like it would be.
Yeah, it's not an everyday thing, Alyssa.
I feel like that'd be a bit of a problem.
It's like her being stuck and then right next to a cockroach and then oh man, and then just being squished like oh man, that just sucks.
The weightless thing.
Yeah.
But that was definitely a very memorable death, I will say.
Yeah. Good practical effects.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
80s practical effects.
Definitely.
Very fleshy.
Yeah. I feel like I don't know, the Kincaid and I will say I really liked Joey's death. I feel like it was almost like a it's like I didn't really enjoy the topless scene in the third one, but this one I feel like they did a really decent job because it's like, he's just chilling in his room, he sees the poster of the girl, and then he sees her, in his bed and see that she's like disappeared from the poster. But it's like I thought how they did that scene was like really interesting and cool.
Mhm.
I feel like Kincaid, unfortunately, I feel like his death scene was kind of lackluster. Aside from the dog pissing fire, but it's like I felt like he deserved a little bit more, it's like Joey got really cool like death scene. It's like why not Kincaid? But yeah,
I did like the way that scene was shot though, like the scrapyard. It was well shot.
Yeah,
It was.
Yeah,
It was.
And I quite like, the cars kind of randomly popping out at him. That was quite well done.
yeah, and I like when like they zoomed out and they show the whole world was like essentially the junkyard, just to show like
just
how isolated and alone he was in that situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool. But where were their powers?
Yeah,
they had powers in the last movie. Where were their powers? Why did they not use them at all?
I was trying to remember what their powers were, honestly.
It would depend what they were, and maybe just.
Well, I remember
sure Kincaid was strong.
Yeah, he was super strong. But didn't he tried to crush? Yeah, he tried to crush Freddy with the car, though.
Yeah, and that was cool, but he really just like pushed it over. So it didn't really like showcase it. He wasn't like holding a car above his head or anything. He just kind of like pushed it over, which, let's be honest, that can be done with a big enough lever. So
yeah.
Well, he seemed to think that was enough, didn't he? Because he did, cheering,
which was also confusing.
Yeah, I think
they faced him before.
Yeah, because at least with Joey's death, you can say it caught him off guard. Thing. So it's not like he had a lot of time to react.
Yeah.
He was probably just confused, and it's like, because at the start of the movie, the two of them don't believe Christian, so there's that stuff. But yeah, you're probably right. Kincaid in the scrapyard probably should have done a little bit more to have tried to have killed him.
Yeah, and also, like, in the previous movies, the wounds that they get in the dream they happen in reality too. But at least with their deaths, there was, like, nothing to indicate that it was Freddy. Like, Kincaid was completely untouched and just died.
Yeah.
And Joey was in the mattress with no damage to the mattress, and there was like no blood in the water in the mattress, and the waterbed was backlit.
Oh well, I don't know.
I was very confused about that.
Well, I think the idea is that this stuff is only appearing to them; it's not appearing to the outside world.
Yeah,
and I think they're sort of drawn into it, and so like I think with Joey, I think the water's real to him, so it's almost like he gets drowned or just suffocated by being pulled down.
Yeah, but
something like that.
It just conflicts with the previous movie's lore, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, we can't.
I mean, I feel like it was kind of based off of. I feel like they were just taking more like liberties with like it looking artful or whatever, because like with Kristen's death, like you actually see it's like she gets thrown into the furnace and then you see that she's on fire. So it's like that is on par with how she was killed. But I mean, with Joey, I feel like with them seeing him in the water mattress or whatever, it makes it look more artful or impactful than just him like laying in the bed with like, it being popped or whatever.
Well, it could have still been popped and like blood all around, and I feel like it still would have been impactful.
Yeah.
But
I feel like they did take some liberties, though.
They did, for sure. It was just confusing liberties.
You know what was funny about the Kilcade one is, because you're right, because you don't actually see him get stabbed, and at first I assumed, because Freddy has that line about like send the message, so I thought maybe he was going to keep him alive and just have him, but then later on you find out he's dead. So I don't know if maybe he stabs him off camera, like that's meant to be a thing.
I'm pretty sure that's what happened, but yeah.
It was a bit confusing at first.
It was. Like most of the movie is them trying desperately to stay awake, and we didn't really get a whole lot of that here.
No.
Yeah, like I almost feel like they should have extended like Joey, Kincaid, and Kristen to maybe like 3/4 of the way through the movie, and then have like Alice like work with them and kind of like understand like what's going on, and then after they 3 die, then Alice kind of takes the reins and then continues being the final girl or whatever. That would have been kind of interesting and would have solved the pacing. But it felt like almost like what was it, Alien 3 or whatever, where they like immediately kill characters from the second movie. That's what this movie felt like, because it's like it's like, oh, these characters that you grew to love from the second or the third movie, we're gonna
get rid of them.
See you later, yeah. We've got a new final girl.
Yeah.
It's a hi bye. They're just passing the baton really quick and just
someone else mentioned that comparison, but I guess it's like a revenge thing for Freddy, but I do agree with you. I think there was a middle ground where like definitely they could have introduced Alice and still had her play a big part, but maybe cut out some of the other characters and maybe had Alice with the other 3 for a little while. I mean, as the film goes on, you can maybe kill 1 or 2 of the others off, but like certainly don't rush it like they did, where it was sort of only, I think by the half an hour mark, I think they were all gone, those 3. So it was pretty rushed, because the movie itself is pretty short. It's like 90 minutes or something.
Yeah, it was not long at all.
Yeah, so you're sort of packing quite a lot into those 90 minutes. So I think that stuff did feel rushed. I think the only time I can remember them playing with that whole "you've got to stay awake" thing was when Dan was in the ambulance quite late in the movie.
Yeah,
because Alice says, "Make sure you don't go to sleep," basically. So that was
Don't
quite
let them
cool.
put you under.
Freddy Shark scene, because that's one of the big.
I loved it. I loved it. And then the way that he just continued bulldozing through the sand, I was like, yes, this is what I live for.
I meant to ask you guys, what did you think about Freddy as the nurse?
That was good.
I was like, is that who I think it is?
Oh yeah. Did you get the nod on his name tag? What was it?
Was it?
I went down a whole rabbit hole with my husband.
Okay, I do want to hear this.
There it is. So the name tag is a nurse, or as a nurse, is a callback to Emergency, a 1970s TV show. Bobby Trope.
Oh, that's clever.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. It said B Trope LVN.
Okay.
Okay, someone must be a fan of that show.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, that was...
noticed that we're like, that's gotta be a reference to something. And he and I went down like a whole rabbit hole trying to figure out who the guy was.
No, that's good. I'm glad you went down that rabbit hole. But I think that's one of those fun scenes where I think you can sort of see it coming, because if you look at the nurse, I could tell that it was a guy, but obviously they weren't making it obvious that, hey, this is Freddy. And I think that's just a fun one, that you don't mind being predictable because you're just waiting, because she's out of it anyway, so it makes sense that she can't tell straight away that hey, this nurse looks more like a man. But I think you're just waiting for the moment where Freddy's going to have the line, and he's got the line about, I want some blood or something, isn't it? Or blood.
Yeah.
It's some line like that.
I'm gonna need to take some blood or something like that.
It.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a lot of great lines in the movie. One scene I really liked, and again, it's got one of his best one-liners in, is, you know, the scene where, and this again was quite creative and cool, but where they had Alice as an older version of herself still working in the diner.
I love that.
Yes.
Yeah.
If the food won't kill you, the service will, or something like, or if the service, one of the two. But that was a really fun line.
Yeah.
But I actually thought the makeup effects on older Alice was pretty cool.
It was.
Scene.
It's an impactful scene because it's like, you know, especially when you're like stuck in a certain like job or whatever that you hate or you don't want to be in there forever, to have a nightmare and see yourself still stuck in that position when you're, you know, much older. It's like, that's nightmare fuel right there.
She said it was her biggest fear was that she was going to be stuck as a waitress for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
So for
I
that
thought
to
that was
draw it into it, that was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that plays into it being like a nightmare type thing. And that's the scene with the pizzas, isn't it? All the friends on the pizza.
That was gross when he put the meatball in his mouth. That was the most gross looking meatball. I know it's supposed to be a head, but still, I was like, at least make it look tasty.
I mean, you kind of expect that kind of thing, though, from Freddy.
I know. It was just still nasty.
This is the dude that, like, would slice off his own fingers in another movie just for the plot. Like,
The cinema scene was quite cool. With Alice ending up in the screen, like you've got that black and white movie,
and then her seeing like Kristen and her friends in the audience.
Yeah, again, that was quite well done.
Yeah,
a lot of creativity, continued creativity,
and leans a little bit more into the religious stuff because of how it ends in the church and what have you, and What did you think about the end of the movie? The stuff in the church, not the very end, which is obviously that fountain scene. But yeah,
I thought the fight was interesting, but the Dream Master stuff in and of itself, I feel like was more of an afterthought. Like the explanation they gave and his comment of "I've been guarding my gate for much longer," and like it felt like it was just kind of like, oh crap, yeah, we need to draw this back into the title.
Sure,
let's throw it in here.
Yeah, like I feel like they could have done a little bit better of a job fleshing that part out. It felt, whenever they got to that scene, it felt a little bit rushed, where they're like, oh yeah, let's just horn this in here, and you know, then it'll be a complete movie. Is that I wish they would have taken a little bit more time on it.
Yeah, because I got the impression with Alice, they were saying that she was kind of like a chosen one, so that sort of explains that a bit. But so that stuff, I guess, works okay. But yeah, it definitely some stuff in the movie and that end scene. Yeah, they just seemed like they were ripping it out of thin air and just coming up with stuff. Also, yeah, they had the stuff about Freddy, his reflection can kill him, apparently. That's a new thing they've added. That's never come up before.
Not once. And I feel like there were other movies where he saw himself in a mirror. And
you would have thought so, yeah.
There was nothing that happened in those, but sure.
Well, and then also, I feel like the third movie did a really good job in like the way that they had to like kill Freddy. Did feel it felt sensical and it felt a lot more like final. Well, this one, it's like they're gonna bring him back. Like it's just like such a like, oh, we're just gonna throw this in here.
Yeah, it felt more like we're gonna put a band-aid on him so we can deal with him in the next movie.
Yeah, that's what it felt like.
Yeah. I think at this point you come to expect that a little bit. I didn't actually mind Alice. Like I thought she was one of the better characters. Another twist I quite liked was in the build up to the finale, where Alice and Dan, who was another blank slate, basically, bit of a useless character,
A little
but
bit, yeah.
I did quite like them going on the loop when they kept trying to get in the car.
Though I was annoyed that it took Dan like 3 times.
Yes.
To be like, we've done this before. It's like, why wouldn't you say something on the second time? Like,
didn't we just do this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a bit brain dead, I guess.
A little bit. But it was really interesting. For a moment, I honestly thought, like, did I get a messed up version, or did our internet mess up? Did it like skip back a little bit? Yeah. Did I accidentally hit the controller and hit back? So that was interesting for sure.
Yeah. But again, I think that's another relationship where it didn't even mean much. I mean, it was only really implied that they were together. Like, they could have just been friends, but I didn't really know much about their relationship. And
she had a crush on him that was painfully obvious the entire movie.
Yeah.
But like, he was kind of a question mark.
Yeah.
And very blank for most of the movie.
I'll say, kind of in the favor of them having so many characters, I thought it was really interesting that Alice was kind of like accidentally handing Freddy like new victims.
Yeah.
And he was like, grateful to her to an extent for it. But to me, it's like almost leaning towards like her trying to figure out how to control the powers and stuff like that. But anyways, it's like, I thought it was cool because it helps her realize it's like, okay, I have these powers. And then second, it creates like a whole like other stakes, because it's like she has to learn to control these powers, and then also help stop any more of her friends from dying. But I don't know, I thought that was kind of interesting, not twist, but interesting aspect that they added to the movie.
Well, and it's kind of frustrating too, because like, she's given this power, isn't told anything about it, and then
like,
what happens if you tell someone not to think of something? Like, they're going to immediately think of that thing.
Yeah.
So he's like, think of your friends, and of course she's trying not to, but what else is going to happen?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, the Dream Master. It's always dream something after a certain point. The next one also has dream as the subtitle.
Oh, okay. I haven't watched the 5th one, I don't think.
Okay, the 5th one.
I may or may not. Some of them run together a little bit for me.
Sure.
My brain just jumps right to the one where the actress that does Nancy is in the movie, and it's like Freddy actually coming after her.
Oh yeah.
That one's.
You mean in the real world? So that's
yeah.
Nightmare. Yeah. Okay, we're true. Yeah, I think the only ones I haven't seen are the remake, and I haven't seen Freddy versus Jason, which does...
Oh, you should.
The remake, you're not missing much.
No, the remake, you're not missing much, but Freddy versus Jason, you should see that one.
Oh, I definitely will. I'll include it on this little run that we're doing on the franchise. So I'll definitely include that as part of this. So that's fun.
I mean, it's right up there with Jason X. Like, you gotta...
like a fun guilty pleasure.
Oh yeah.
Oh, cool. I'm gonna ask you guys, starting with you, Alyssa, what would you rate this movie out of 10?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Probably give it like maybe a 6 out of 10, just because it's definitely like it's definitely got a little bit of personality to it, but it doesn't really stick out as strongly as like some of the other movies that are already in the franchise. So I think a 6 out of 10 is fair.
That's fair. Okay. Jess?
Yeah, I'd give it a 5.75.
Oh, we're going very technical.
I can't quite give it a 6, but it deserves more than a 5. Like, I feel like they could have done more with it. I feel like it also would have been better with fewer characters. I feel like they tried to do a bit too much, and it got a little bit lost in itself at times.
Okay.
So, only not the worst one. So.
Yeah, it's definitely not the worst one. Okay, well, I'm pretty close to you because I think partly because of our conversation, like we've definitely brought up that the overall is quite good fun despite the flaws with it. So, yeah, I'm just over the halfway point, similar to you. So I'll go 5.5. Like, because it is quite a messy film, 6 maybe sounds a bit too high, and a lot of the characters I'm not so keen on. Like I said, I didn't actually mind Alice as a final girl and some of the stuff they did with her, but obviously there was a bit of a mess and the first half was rushed. But Freddie's on good form. And
Freddy's amazing as always.
Pretty much always. And yeah, it does get even more quippier as the movie. But this movie has some of its best lines, I feel.
Yeah.
So that's good stuff. So yeah, overall, I think it's just above average, probably, I would say. So 5.5 for me. And all pretty similar. So that's our thoughts on A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. Let us know what you think of the movie in the comments below. You can like and subscribe as always. And before we wrap up, I will give Horror Movie Tea a chance to promote their channel and what they do.
Well, if you like movie reviews on horror movies and like watching people play horror games, we're on YouTube as Horror Movie Tea. But yeah. We're not very good at promoting ourselves.
Okay,
we've done it for a number of years and we're still not very good at it. We're professionals.
You would think we're professionals. You would think that we would get some kind of script or something together to promote ourselves, but no. We're two very nerdy girls who like to watch horror movies and rate them based on entertainment and realism.
Yeah.
And once a month, we also live stream ourselves playing horror games. And at least one of us is very, very chicken and tends to freak out a lot.
Hey, you can be chicken too.
Sometimes, yes. That's why I said at least one of us. Wasn't going to name names, but all right. And of course, we have our snark and sass. So definitely come join us over on YouTube.
Yeah, I'll post the link to the channel in the description. Go and support them. And yeah, we'll definitely do more of these franchise type reviews as a collaboration. And I will just give you a taste for the next one that I'm planning on doing with you guys. And that is I Know What You Did Last Summer.
A classic.
I still know what you did last summer after all these years.
Yeah.
27 years. I still know. So we'll talk about that hopefully in the coming month because there is a new movie out this year. So I've decided.
I thought I saw something about that.
Yeah.
I think it's been confirmed for this year, maybe quite late in the year, but I think, so it will be interesting to revisit the original movies. So we're going to kick that off quite soon. But thanks for listening, guys. Keep watching scary movies. And I did all the good lines in the review, so I don't really have an outro line. I'm not repeating that needle dick line because that was so bad. I just did, but it was so bad. I can't think of one. See you later, guys. Have a good one. Take care. Bye. Bye.
Do you know what terror is?
Hello.
Do you live here?
Nobody lives here.
long has it been since you've been on Elm Street? Welcome to a brand new nightmare. He is the first in fear.
Will you help me? I'm gone! Someone help me, please!
Second to none.
Don't let them put you to sleep.
He has no mercy. And no equal.
Now no one sleeps.
Get ready. This August, your wildest dreams will come true.
How sweet, fresh meat.
A Nightmare on Elm Street, Part 4. The Dream Master.